Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is our sneak peek program for Bonheur and Beyond, celebrating women in wildlife art. I'm Jane Lavino, the Sugden Chief Curator of Education here at the museum. This exhibit officially opens tomorrow, which is June 4th, and it remains up through August 16th. We're grateful to our generous exhibit sponsors, some of whom might be with us today, and they are Lisa Carlin, Rachel and Avi Cantor, in honor of the Cantor family women, McRae Foundation, McGee Foundation, Pam Niner, Peggy Schneider Rose Endowment Fund, Ellen and Peter Sapphire, Caroline and Ken Taylor, and Marcia and Mike Taylor. Thank you to them. So the exhibit begins right here, and it extends throughout the Bison Gallery, which is where we are standing right now. And it also extends out into the King Gallery, which is the corridor gallery that goes past the museum classroom. And we'll be going out there too. Our first speaker today is Dr. Tammy Hanawalt. She is our curator of art who created this exhibit with other members of our curatorial team. Tammy will give us an overview of the exhibit, which includes some historic and some contemporary works, all from our permanent collection. And then from there, Tammy will introduce our guest artist, who is Rox Corbett, who will then be speaking to you all. And I don't want to forget this, as always, following the sneak peek program, which lasts about 30 minutes, attendees are welcome to have lunch in our Palette restaurant. They graciously offer a 10% discount to any program attendees. You just have to identify yourself as a sneak peek program person, and then they will offer that to you. Thank you. I'm going to pass it to you, Tammy.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Did you want to mention your party tonight?
Oh, I'll do that at the end.
Okay,
At the end. I'll do that at the end.
Excited about it.
Yes.
Welcome everyone. I would like to start with a little opening acknowledgement, a land rights acknowledgement. Every community owes its existence and its vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life. And some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We are in Jackson, Wyoming, the ancestral lands of the Eastern Shoshone tribe, and we acknowledge the Northern Arapaho, Bannock, Blackfeet, Absaluka, Cheyenne, Gros Ventre, Kiowa, Nez Perce, and Ute tribes, others who have historic ties to this place. We pay respects to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that have brought us here today. Well, this has been a labor of love for me to do this exhibit. I'm so excited it's open. I don't know why I'm getting so emotional. I usually don't do that. But biggest question I get from people is, why don't you have more women exhibited in the galleries? And I am like, well, there's a lot more other artists that we have in the collection. And it turns out that we only usually have a few artists in our permanent galleries at a time. So this is a great way to honor and respect all of the women that, well, from everywhere. Wildlife art is not typically thought of as being done by women artists, probably because it's been about exploration, hunting, historically. I set up these rooms that we first honor Rosa Bonheur, who's also the anniversary of her 200th birthday. Rosa Bonheur was a very popular, well-known artist in her time. Maybe a lot of you don't know that. I just talked to somebody yesterday who said they'd never heard of Rosa Bonheur. And I don't blame them. Women artists were not included in survey texts in art history like those ones you take in college and your freshman, sophomore years, until the 1980s. So these survey overviews, and that's when I was in college, was my undergraduate. And Rosa Bonheur, in fact, is not even included in all of those survey books, but she is more and more being acknowledged. She was very popular among, she was from France, and she had a house that she was able to buy. She was so popular in Paris that she had to move out of her apartment, and there is some text that I've written that she was looked at as an animal, but she had to move out of her Paris apartment to her chateau next to the Forest Fontainebleau. And that is where she saw a lot of the animals that she did. And she was doing animals since she could draw. Apparently her mother gave her the alphabet and said, draw an animal out of all the letters. And that was how she started to have such an affection with animals. Her father was an artist, but he left the family. She had a deep connection to her mother, and she never quite got over the loss of her mother at a young age. She moved in with another family that was, and the daughter and her had a very close relationship throughout her life. I think she was 12 years old when she moved in with the other family, and I'm forgetting their name right now. But a lot of this information is in the text that you see on the wall. And the thing that kind of gets me is Rosa Bonheur was such a great artist, and you'll see that from the paintings that we have exhibited here. We have another one in the Gilcrease Gallery, the European Gallery, that is beautiful pastel of a deer. It's very difficult to move, very heavy, and very delicate. So we left that where it is, but it is there, and that's also on the labels. As I said, Rosa Bonheur had a deep connection with her mother, and if you look over here, there's a really beautiful painting she does of chamois. They are goats, not antelope, and she saw these, in the mountains outside of Paris, and it's a lovely picture of a mother and child. And there are some more mother and child paintings around the area. We have Georgia O'Keeffe. That's one that everybody looks for, and I am so glad this exhibit is open because I don't know how many people in the last couple of weeks have said, where did the Georgia O'Keeffe go? So she's a popular one to look for. Also, in this, I've acknowledged some of the native artists. Santa Clara Pueblo is Luis Gutierrez, the little plate, and Jean Leate. Acoma Pueblo went to Zuni and revived some of the older images. Women's art has been considered craft a lot of times, and I address this too in this exhibit. Definitely native artists considered craft, but these have been designs that have been done and changed throughout generations. So these are trained artists, just like any artist that is trained. They learn these designs from a young age, and if you look, how can you be so precise there? And it's amazing. And around the corner, we have a more contemporary native artist, a very popular one, Polita Velarte. Some very nice deer that she did. And there was a whole resurgence of native art and native artists in the early part of the 20th century. And they got a lot of recognition, but again, like Rosa Bonheur, their histories weren't written about. There's a lot of women artists that were working and popular in their time, but history didn't do them justice. And if you come this way, you can see a couple of our spectacular sculptors that were doing heroic-sized sculptures in the early 20th century. Anahaia Huntington, who opened, Brook Green Gardens? So she was a patron of the arts as well as an artist. Catherine Weems. This dolphin is a maquette of a larger dolphin, 7-foot long sculpture of dolphins that is at the New England Aquarium. Again, a lot of these forgotten women. We have Lanford Wilson over here, more contemporary contemporary. Unfortunately, she died young in 2000. So, but we have a lovely painting of her work. And if we come into this gallery, so the more historic artists are in this area, and the contemporary artists are in this gallery. In this area, I've put the contemporary artists. This is a little bit different layout than we usually do for our changing exhibits, but I thought it worked pretty nice. I had some help up front from one of our people, Stephen, helped me get some interviews with the artists. I always like to include the artist's voice whenever I can, so you'll see some quotes from artists on some of these labels. And at this time, I'm going to turn the conversation over to Rox Corbett. Let me introduce Rox to you, who did this piece down here. She is an award-winning charcoal artist who makes representational drawings mostly of animals. Her pictures are detailed, textural, and somewhat abstract in composition, full of shadows and light. An important aspect of her work is conveying the behavior or spirit of the animal she depicts. Rox Corbett exhibitions include Quest for the West, at the Idle Jorg in Indianapolis, Western Visions, of course, that's ours, and you'll see a lot of our Western Vision artists here. And the Buffalo Bill Art Show and Sale at the Center of the West in Cody, and Cowgirl Up at the Desert Caballeros in Wickenburg. She has also exhibited in galleries and museums in Montana, Wyoming, Arizona, Texas, and Quebec. Rox earned a BFA from Concordia University in Montreal, and she lives on a ranch in Clark's Forks in Yellowstone with her Dutch Shepherd Echo and her 33-year-old horse and lots of grizzlies. I'd also like to acknowledge too that Laney is another artist that is, her piece is right next to Rox, and she's here today too. So welcome to our artists, and Rox, I will let you take it away.
Okay, thank you. I better move back. So, first of all, I'm honored to have been asked to speak. I'm honored to have had this picture bought by the museum. I'm honored by the presence of several in-laws who happen to be here totally accidentally, and they're out here. One lives here, the others are just visiting, except for Julia, who works here now full-time. So I want to say thanks for you guys. So bears, yeah, my property hosts bears, and I put trail cameras out when there's dead animals on the property. So that photograph was from a trail camera, and it was a dead animal, but it wasn't a bull elk like that, because that's a pretty fancy bull elk. So he or she was on the carcass, looking out as dawn was coming, making sure no other bear was going to come and get his prize, or her prize. And I just like the idea of making a sort of a frame for the bear out of the antlers. So the way I got those beautiful antlers is I went through Bugle magazine, which is the magazine of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and just found a picture of a hunter with this, dead bull elk. Speaking of hunting, many wildlife artists came from the hunting tradition. I do hunt, but I did kill one elk, but I'm done now. So I just used a photograph of his antlers, and I really wanted to, all the different textures, like the background, the fur, and the antlers. And charcoal is my favorite medium, and I used to do pen and ink. I've done some watercolors. I don't understand oil painting, but I wanted to get really loose, so I got the big sticks of charcoal. Well, it didn't work. I mean, detail is sort of my thing. But that's the origin of that picture. And my first time in this show, Western Visions, was 2015. And they called me and told me they bought it, and I just about fell on the floor. So I'm really glad it's here. And it did come out for a show that same year, I think. And I was kitty corner to Robert Bateman, and I almost fell on the floor again. Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go look at a few more black and whites, because that's really what I enjoy doing and understand better. So Can we kind of go
Yeah, I
that
would
way?
invite everyone to come down maybe and look at it
Yeah,
first,
if
so
you
we
want to
can
look and
start, or
see
come
my
take a look,
detail.
walk by.
So Rox, is that the same media that you use, or is
Actually,
it?
is this pencil or charcoal? It looks like
I don't have my time, though.
What does it say?
Yeah, me too.
We have it on. It is charcoal.
Okay. Which is what yours is also,
Yeah.
correct?
I tend to pile the charcoal on more, this is more sketchy and mine is more detailed. I mean, pushing it into paper. Quicker too. Okay, like there's some really nice ones in here. Mary was supposed to come. She couldn't, she was going to talk, but her experiment monochromatic was sort of fanciful and mythical almost. Anyway, I love that picture. And now we're going to go around the corner. I don't know if you can hear me. Another one, monochromatic, another local artist. And look, all cows, no bull elk in this picture. So, good for her. There's something that's completely opposite of what I do. This gorgeous thing is huge for one thing. And it looks as though she just went, which is something I've always aspired to, but have never managed to do. Maybe I'll learn eventually. So I just wanted to share that too, just how gestural it is and how all these, you know, the marks and the lines have feeling and depth, like they're heavy in some places, and it's just, it's a gorgeous, quick life study that I really admire. And she's not dead.
No.
Not dead yet, but
Nobody's in this gallery is.
oh, fingers crossed.
So Rox, I have a question.
Yeah.
So do you ever work in color, or do you stick with the monochromatic charcoal pencil?
For art shows, that is my forte, so I'm in black and white, but I've also done a lot of watercolor, but not showing. I do commissions and stuff. Yeah. Mostly pets, people's pets.
So Rox, is this, did this not take her very long kind of thing? Like the look of it is sort of a quick, like you were describing, or is this something that actually, to create all that movement, would take quite a long time?
I'm thinking not. I'm thinking, I mean, I can't say how long it would take, but if you go to a life drawing class and you're doing your gestural lines and maybe filling in some shadows, it could be done in half an hour.
Oh.
So I think. Especially if she's got big fat sticks of charcoal, which I think, I think she does. These are really heavy lines that come from those big ones rather than the small, like the willow charcoals and things like that.
And she does a lot of sculptures too.
Does she? Well,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
very sculptural.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for letting me know that. And it reminds me also of the lions, I forget her name, right outside the door.
Yeah.
Also,
Anahaia Huntington,
yeah, just very muscular and not at all feminine. And I don't consider my artwork feminine either. These I wouldn't, I mean, if you showed an art collector this, I bet they would say a man did. Same with those lions outside there too.
It's funny they presume that, right?
I don't understand. And I just briefly want to talk about a woman who, when did she die? Almost at the end of World War II. She was a printmaker, then became a sculptor. Her name is Kati Kollwitz. She was from Berlin. She was obviously later than Rosa Bonheur and other well-known artists, but she was in the 1889 Grand Exhibit in Berlin. She was nominated to win the gold medal, and now I have to take out my cheat sheet because Kaiser Wilhelm II at the time had this to say. And now I have to change my glasses too. So at this, I'm not sure how old she was, but her forte was social justice, poverty, war, and motherhood. So when you talked about the issues with Rosa and mothers and children, she was very big on that. She's done famous stuff, and she really ought to be in this museum, actually.
She does wildlife. I don't think she did that much wildlife though.
No, that's true.
She did a lot of.
Wild children in the slums. We didn't have enough data. That's a good point. Okay, so this is what the good Kaiser had to say. I beg you, gentlemen, a medal for a woman, that would really be going too far. Orders and medals of honor belong on the breasts of worthy men. And I'll end with that. And thank you for coming. And if anybody has any questions for me, please.
Yeah, this is a great time for questions. Just speak up if you have any questions for either Tammy or for Rox.
And apologize to the men in this group. It's just, women have a long way to go to catch up.
Yeah.
What are you working on right now that's on your easel?
Ooh, I just finished a picture that's coming here this fall.
Yeah,
And it's a great gray owl. And it's cool about that thing. And here's the thing, I'm thinking of putting yellow in the eyes.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Do it.
I think I should. I need to branch out, so. Get a little color.
Go crazy.
Any other questions?
I had a question for Tammy. Can you tell us about your shirt?
Oh, yeah.
Available in the shop.
So I think Rox has the printout that I did of it, but this is Gorilla Girls, so I have a little section in the exhibit about Gorilla Girls. Now this is the gorilla, it started out as in 1985, Gorilla Girls started out as they were protesting an exhibit on a survey of European artists. I don't remember the name exactly without it being in front of me, but they didn't get the reaction that they needed, right? So they thought what would be a good idea is go out and put up a bunch of signs that are talking trash about this exhibit at night when nobody knows who we are. And that got them some reaction. So they decided to organize a group. It was about 10 women. And they started with the gorilla, the G-U-E-R-I-L-L-A, I think that's how it's spelled, gorilla, like freedom fighters. But one of their, one of the founding members said that one of their people was a bad speller, and she wrote gorilla, G-O-R-R-I-L-A. And they said, great, let's get some, I don't know, if they had a gorilla mask laying around. So they don on gorilla masks and they go out and protest, and they keep their anonymity that way. And the women in the groups, they continue to put up signs, usually when nobody's around, so they don't know who did it. The idea of the gorilla being their mascot was interesting too, because that's another stereotype that gorillas, you know, they're just sort of, I guess they would be considered masculine creatures, brutal creatures, but they're very gentle. Actually, they can be very gentle. And there's a really nice sculpture by Sherry Sander that shows a very gentle gorilla that she did. That's a maquette for bigger ones. One is at the Denver Zoo. But my shirt says the advantages of being a woman artist. And it's all sarcasm. It's by the Gorilla Girls, and I was supporting the Gorilla Girls. I swore I had one of these in college, but I couldn't remember what I did with it, and I bought another one a couple years ago from the Gorilla Girls. I put it on the website.
Do you want to read it?
T-shirt. Yeah, I can read
Yeah,
some
I mean,
of them.
it's because it's really funny.
It is funny.
Yeah.
So the advantages of being a woman artist: working without the pressure of success, not having to be in shows with men, having an escape from the art world in your 4 freelance jobs, knowing your career might pick up after you're 80, being reassured that whatever kind of art you make, it'll be labeled feminine, not being stuck in a tenure track teaching position, seeking your ideas and seeing your ideas live on in the works of others, having the opportunity to choose between career and motherhood, not having to chuck on those big cigars or wear those Italian suits, having more time to work after your mate dumps you for someone younger, and being included in revisited versions of art history, as I said before, not having to undergo the embarrassment of being called a genius, and getting your picture in art magazines wearing a gorilla suit. So, pretty funny. They do it with humor, but there's seriousness behind their humor. They want to point out definitely the biases about women artists and different cultural artists to artists that have been underrepresented in shows and in museums. There still are far fewer women in art history books and in the spaces of museums. And we do, as Rox just said, we have a lot of work to do. Still.
And we have one more thing, which we have a few minutes left, so I think we're going to take advantage of it. And that is, Laney has graciously offered to talk about her piece, which is if you go right down, go back down to the end of this corridor.
This painting grew out of a trip that I made with a girlfriend of mine and John Montinsky into the high Wind River Mountains. And that was quite a few years ago, but we were up there because that's where the sheep are in the summer, the bighorn sheep. And, you know, so that all of my paintings have, you know, a story behind it. And this is motherhood and children. And, you know, they're doing various things. The lambs like to play with each other and, you know, scratch and nursing. And this is a young yearling, you can tell her horns aren't very big. And this is exactly what it's like up above Ross Lake. All these rocks and lichens, or at least it was 15 years ago. Ross Lake is south of Du Bois in the high mountains. And the sheep that winter down near Du Bois all go up on Middle Mountain for the summertime. So this is a glacial valley, and the glacial lake is very deep. And it's just wonderful, beautiful country up there. But what's important to me is animal behavior, and I want people to feel the connection between humans and our young, and animals and their young, because they aren't all that different. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Laney, I love how you painted that glacial lake. It was so deep.
Yes.
It's just gorgeous.
And the reflection.
Yes.
Well, it's a beautiful country up there. I remember when I was doing the lake that I was experimenting with the oil paint, because you know, if you use some medium in there, you can drag it and make it look totally different than, you know, the brushwork that's here. So yeah, it came off pretty well. And anyway, if any of you get Western art and architecture, there's an article that just came out in the June-July issue about my work. And it's also about the Bonheur exhibit here at the museum. So.
Question?
We have a question over here.
It's a question for both of you, actually. So, as women artists, and kudos to the museum for this exhibit. What do you feel like, we're all art supporters, we're all here. What can the community do you think, to better support women artists?
The community?
The community.
Each of us individually.
Each of us individually together, who, when we leave here, the idea that we would spread the community.
Well, I don't know. I'd like to, you know, when all the men get together, the male artists, you know, they're always talking and promoting each other. And I think, you know, if women can enter in those conversations and ask the men, how many women artists can you name that are as good as you are? You know, something to make, I know, something to make people think, because they discount us regularly. It's very frustrating, you know. I mean, a guy can get into the Prix de West and all the fancy shows, but it's stacked against women. They don't even think about asking us. And I would love to compete with them.
Yes.
I would say there's nothing wrong with the community calling people out. You know, there's nothing wrong with people going to a gallery and saying, where are you with an artist, right? Like, point it out.
Yeah.
It has got to help.
Tammy hears that all the time.
I do, and I can point them out when they're out in I've had to take some out. There, you know, we as a museum need to work harder at getting more in our permanent collection, more diversity, more representation from artists that have been underrepresented. And I think a lot of museums are struggling with that. You know, it's still only about 20% across the board that women and other voices are in museums. 80% is still white, male, European trained artists. And that's how it is. But I think everybody's working. And in fact, the art market has shown that women artists and Native artists are breaking records with sales. So people are looking for those. I just saw, you know, I would love to have a Louise Bourgeois spider here. Oh, I thought of it, but I think she's a little out of our reach. A small spider just went for an auction for $16 million.
Oh my gosh.
So maybe the women are getting a little bit more attention now. Maybe everybody that hasn't been heard before.
Well, Tammy, I just turned 80, so maybe things are...
Oh, yeah.
So it is time to wrap things up for now, but we invite you all to come back tonight. We have a community opening celebration for this same exhibit. It runs from 5 to 7 p.m. and the evening event is called Sloshies, Sliders, and Strum Bucket, which is the band. Our curatorial staff and some of our volunteers who are with us today will be back tonight, and they'll be stationed throughout the exhibit galleries to give you more insight and answer any questions you might have. Also, we'll have 2 versions of a scavenger hunt for kids and families and as well as for adults. So come back 5 to 7 tonight, and thank you for joining us today.
All right. Thank you.